Ever wonder why some negotiators seem to control the outcome before they even walk into the room? It's not about being charismatic, and it's definitely not about being aggressive. It's about a hidden architecture of power, an invisible leverage that basically predetermines who's going to win. Okay, let's get into it. We're here to map out the real physics of power in any high-stakes deal.
Just let that sink in for a second. This is the central signal we're decoding today. It means most negotiations, they're not really a meeting of equals at all. It's more like one side gets to draw the map, define the entire playing field, and the other side, well, they're just left to play inside the boundaries they've been handed.
Most people think you win a negotiation by just arguing better. But that's just noise. The real signal, the pattern that shows up in every single high-stakes environment is this. Power is pre-negotiated. It's forged in the information gap that exists long before anyone even says a word.
And that brings us to a really critical insight. The deal, it's often already done before the meeting even starts. The negotiation you see, that's just the final act of a play, where one side has already written the script.
Think about it. Real leverage isn't built in the heat of the moment with some clever argument. No, it's built in the days, sometimes weeks, before, through the strategic gathering and control of information. The side with the better map of reality? They've already won. The actual negotiation is just a formality, really. It's just about settling the price of that victory.
And there's actually a name for this. It's called pre-negotiation positioning. And this isn't just about doing your homework, it's an offensive strategy. It's about creating a situation where your terms seem like the only reasonable options, all because your opponent is working with a deliberately incomplete picture of the world. So one side gets to set the tempo, and the other, well, they can only react. And don't make the mistake of thinking this is just some niche corporate tactic. This is a fundamental pattern of power. It shows up in every arena where the stakes are high. You see this exact same imbalance play out everywhere. In M&A deals, it's the hidden liability that one side knows about. When you're hiring, it's the salary band the candidate can't see. In diplomacy, it's knowing your rival's internal political pressures. For venture capital, it's knowing that a founder only has 3 weeks of cash left. See? The context changes, but the physics of power, it's exactly the same.
So here's the crucial takeaway. In a negotiation that's defined by these information gaps, it's not really a two-party discussion. It's a monologue by one party, with a little audience participation from the other. One side, and only one side, holds all the levers of control.
Okay, so now that we've identified the pattern, let's dissect how this advantage is actually weaponized. How do elite operators actively exploit these information gaps? Because make no mistake, it is a deliberate, almost surgical process.
This really gets to a core principle. Your opponent's uncertainty is a much more powerful tool than just applying direct pressure. See, when they're confused about your alternatives, or your real deadlines, or what you really want, they start making concessions just to reduce their own anxiety. Their confusion literally becomes your leverage.
And it really does follow a playbook. First, you map what they don't know. Second, you frame the entire agenda around those blind spots. Third, and this is key, you offer selective transparency. You share harmless, verifiable bits of information to look open and build a false sense of trust. And finally, step 4, you just let their own uncertainty do the heavy lifting, compelling them to give up value just to get some clarity. This is the art of what's called strategic transparency. And honestly, it's a performance. The most dominant person in a negotiation often presents as the most reasonable one. They seem calm, they seem cooperative, they seem open, all while keeping their critical information, their real leverage, completely and totally unreadable.
So what happens when you're on the wrong side of this information gap? The cost isn't just a few percentage points on a deal. Oh no, it's something far more fundamental. When you look at the outcomes for the uninformed party, they are predictably bleak. A full 40% of them just get squeezed on price. Another 35% end up accepting fundamentally bad terms they'll regret later. And the last 25%, they concede critical values somewhere else in the deal. Look at that chart. There is no winning slice. They're just different ways of losing. But even those numbers don't really capture the true cost. The real cost is the total loss of agency. It's being systematically outmaneuvered without ever even understanding how it happened. You're not just losing a negotiation, you are literally operating inside a cage that your opponent built for you probably weeks before you ever sat down to talk.
Okay, so let's pivot from the problem to the solution. How do you avoid this trap? It requires a fundamental shift in your mindset. You have to start thinking in asymmetries. And here is the absolute essential difference. The average negotiator, they obsess over their arguments. They prepare their talking points. The elite negotiator asks a completely different question. They ask, what critical information am I missing? What does my opponent know that I don't? Their focus isn't on what they're going to say, but on what they can't yet see. You see, for the best operators out there, negotiation isn't a debate. It's an information architecture problem. They don't just gather data, they map it, they value it, and they manage the flow of it as the ultimate source of power. They are literally building the architecture of the deal. So how do you actually apply this? Well, before you walk into your next negotiation, you need to conduct your own information audit. And you can start by asking yourself 3 very precise questions. First, what critical knowledge does your opponent have that they are intentionally hiding? Don't assume good faith here. Assume they hold advantages. Your job is to figure out what they are: their real deadline, their actual budget ceiling, their unseen alternatives. Second, how do you systematically, and that word is important, how do you systematically identify and plug your own information gaps? What's your process for this? Is it just reactive, or is it a deliberate, proactive strategy to light up your own blind spots before they can be used against you? And finally, the ultimate question. In this specific deal you're working on, can possessing superior data make your position not just strong, but irresistible? Can you learn something so critical that the other side has absolutely no choice but to negotiate within the reality that you have defined for them?